the session. So good morning, guys. Last week, if you remember, I know it's been a long time, but Thursday we started working on lesson 4, which was application of rates. Again, we take 2 days for these lessons. So hopefully it definitely feels like you have enough time for it. And just make sure that you're asking me questions or emailing me when you get stuck on something, all right? So lesson 4, application of rates, we started. We're gonna finish it today. And just to give you guys an overview, right? What we're finishing up today is the last lesson for the first unit. So after today, that means that tomorrow we're getting on to unit 2, which is working on expressions and equations, right? So you really wanna make sure that you're using that independent math time that's built in to finish working on catching up with any of the math resets that you might be missing, right? Also, if you got less than an 80% on any of the mastery tests, you wanna make sure that you retry it, right? And I go through, I look at it, I see if it's locked, I'll unlock it, I message people. If for some reason I missed that, just make sure you message me and say, hey, this is locked, I wanna try it again so that you can do that, okay? So, just getting to the lesson for today. I'm gonna really quickly review what we started last week on Thursday and then get onto the slides that we didn't cover last week, all right? But again, the idea for this second day is more for me to answer questions that you might have because we should have gone over this already, okay? So remember, it said the objective for this lesson was that we're gonna be able to solve unit rate problems, including those involving unit pricing and constant speed, okay? So we saw the example of a train moving from one place to another. We knew how far the train went. We knew how long it took the train to get there. So using those 2 pieces of information, we were able to figure out the speed of the train, right? And remember, the way that you find the speed is you take the distance traveled and you divide the distance by the amount of time that it took. Right, Kevin? So the idea is that I'm just really quickly going over the first couple of slides, and then you guys were, again, supposed to go through and finish this section on your own. I'm just gonna kind of review it, answer any questions that people might have. That's the idea with the second session, all right? So remember, this slide gave us a couple of different equations. Speed is equal to distance over time. I would say focus on memorizing that top one, all right? The other 2, you can figure out from the top one, and usually at this point in the 6th grade, they're gonna give those to you, all right? We answered a question like this, right? So the other thing is going on to unit price, which we also saw by looking at, I think I showed you guys an example of like diapers on Amazon last week. So that's an example of unit price. If you figure out how much something costs overall, you divide it by how many things you have, that tells you how much it costs for just one of those things, right? And then likewise, if you want to figure out the total cost for something, you're going to take how many things you're buying and multiply it by how much it costs for just one of those things, right? So again, a lot of this should hopefully seem simple when it's going over it, right? Just let me know, please, if you have any questions about this stuff here. So it gives us a really basic example here. It says oranges cost $2 per pound. Right, so you go to the grocery store, you see $2 per pound, and it asks you how much does it cost for 4 pounds. So that's simple. Every pound costs $2, so it's just 4 pounds, the number that you're buying, multiplied by the price to give you just $8 per pound. Again, hopefully if these over here don't seem that difficult. So next slide over here, again, just another example where we're using unit price. Except in this case here, we need to first figure out what the unit price is, all right? So it says here that Annie bought 6 pounds of berries for $12, all right? So let's say she knows how much it weighs, she knows how much she bought it for, and then she wants to buy another 10 pounds. So to do that, the first thing she has to figure out is how much does it cost for just 1 pound of those berries, right? So if she bought 6 pounds and it cost $12, hopefully this is something that you can just figure out by looking at the numbers. Each of those pounds of berries would have to cost just $2. And what we found out was just by dividing the price by how many pounds that she bought. $12 divided by 6 pounds gives you just $2 per pound, right? And again, you can check that by checking and seeing, does 2 multiplied by 6 pounds give you $12? Yes, it does, right? So using that information, we could then figure out how much is it going to cost for her to buy 10 pounds of those berries, right? So then we know if she has 10 pounds to buy, it costs her $2 per pound. 10 times 2 just gives her $20 for those berries. And again, I'm not seeing anybody asking me any questions, so I'm assuming that most of us already went through this. We don't have any questions yet. Please stop me if you do. All right, so this page here, again, ideally we went already over it. So if you have questions, you got stuck somewhere over here, let me know. But the main idea for this part was just to use the equations that they gave you. And it also helps to try and draw out a picture, right? This one over here, it has a picture of where a train is going. And here's the formula. Speed is equal to distance divided by time. This one over here doesn't have a picture. So you might want to go up and see, right? Okay, so they're referencing this. You have to look back and just see where you're starting, where you're finishing, picture it in your mind, then use the equation that's given here. All right, so I'll give you guys a minute just to let me know if anybody had any questions with this section, if you were stuck with anything, right? So just 30 seconds to check it, what you guys had there. And if you had any questions, just please let me know before I move on. Right, and also at the end of these here, there's a self-evaluation. Just please make sure that you also fill that out there just to rate yourself. Because when I go through and I read these, I can see how comfortable you are with these. All right, so I'm not seeing any questions. Lane, welcome. Can you just rename yourself Lane? I'm not sure who this is for attendance purposes. Right, and then there are just some practice parts here. I'm not going to go through all of these, but in this example here, all you have to do is try and figure out by using this table here how much it's going to cost to buy each of these here. So we have how much you're buying. You're buying 3 pounds of bananas. We know bananas cost 65 cents per pound. How much does it cost for those bananas, right? So all these questions here, they're simple. All you have to do is multiply the amount that you're buying by the price per pound, right? And this is a good example. I mean, I'm not sure how often you guys are going to go to the store and buy 4 pounds of grapes, but when you're on a budget, right, which it's smart to be on a budget when you're going to the store, it's helpful to figure out before you get to the register how much money you're actually going to pay, right? You don't want to go around and just pick a bunch of things that you like, to get to the register and see that you actually went like $20 over your budget. So it's kind of a good idea to try to know how to work some stuff like this out. Right, so it does give us some other examples of how we can also use unit rates. So the example that it's giving here has to do with somebody that's mowing some lawns, right? And you always see these kind of questions in math tests where it says, you know, somebody is mowing a bunch of lawns, somebody is washing cars, somebody painting walls, and just trying to figure out if they do a certain amount in you know, a certain amount of time, how much can they do in just 1 unit of time? That's the idea, and trying to figure out what a unit rate is, right? So in this case here, we know that somebody is mowing 8 lawns in 2 days, right? And this is a skill that you guys are just gonna have to know how to do, because once you guys actually do get up to higher level math, like algebra, right? Questions like this are kind of built into harder questions. So they might give you a question where you need to set up some kind of algebraic systems of equations, and they might have something like this at the start of it that if you don't know how to just set up a unit rate like this, you wouldn't be able to answer the question, right? So it says that somebody mows 8 lawns in 2 days. We want to figure out at what rate they're working. So usually when it says what rate, we want to think about a unit rate. So not how many lawns they're mowing in 2 days, but how many lawns they're mowing in just 1 day. That's what it means when we're talking about a rate. So, and again, just like we did before, you're just going to basically divide the number of stuff that you have by whatever rate you're trying to get. So the lawns divided by the number of days, 8 divided by 2 gives you 4, right? So what that 4 means is that he can mow 4 lawns every 1 day. And also, right, just please don't forget that you can check your work with things, because a lot of times students, right, I say, okay, so I need to divide something it has happened before where a student would just divide in the wrong order. And they'd say, okay, so let's do 2 divided by 8 for some reason. And in that case, 2 divided by 8 is 1/4 or 0.25, right? And that's fine if that's what you did, because at least you knew that you had to divide something. But what you should really do is stop and say, okay, does my answer make sense? And I would say, okay, so what this means here is this should be 0.25 lawns per day, but then you would say, wait a second, that doesn't make sense, right? If I'm mowing less than one lawn in one day, how am I gonna mow 8 lawns in 2 days, right? That just doesn't make sense. So a lot of times with these word problems, it's really easy to check your answers, right? So please try and check your answers to see and make sure that they do make sense, right? I don't want you guys to get things wrong just because we're not being careful over stuff, okay? So next one over here, it says, let's look at another example. If somebody who can mow 3 lawns per day mows 18 lawns, we want to figure out how long does it take for them to mow 18 lawns, right? So again, you can do this a couple of different ways. What you can do first is figure out what your unit rate is, and then use that unit rate to figure out that. Or what they're doing over here is it says the number of days you get to mow 18 lawns. So we have 18 lawns divided by 3, because they can do 3 per day to get 6. All right, just please let me know if you guys have any questions on this part, because again, it's easy for me to look at this stuff and say that it's easy. I've been doing this for years. So sometimes I might think that something is easy and you guys might not think it's easy. So if it's not easy, please let me know and I can try to re-explain something. All right, so we've got, I believe, 2 more slides of things to go over. So just another example that's really similar to the last one is figuring out how much money somebody makes per car washed, all right? So in this example here, it says Tony washes cars at the local garage. He earns $400 for washing 10 cars, all right? So that's important information. And it says, this week, his wages for washing each car has been increased by $3, right? So this question is gonna be a couple of different parts. So now we know that his wage increased by $3, but we actually have to try and figure out what was his wage before, right? So first we got to figure out how much he will earn if he washes, 10 cars this week, right? So again, this is a 2-part problem. The first part is we want to look back to that first week and say that, okay, he made $400 for 10 cars. So how much did he make for 1 car, right? And these numbers are simple enough that ideally, again, we can look at these and say, okay, so in that case, it should just be 40, right? $40 multiplied by 10 cars gets you to his total wage of $400, right? So I know, again, right, remember which question are you answering? We're trying to answer how much does he make per car this week. So he made $40 for every car last week. Now he's making $3 more, right? So that tells us that this week, he's gonna get $43 for each of those cars. So if he's making $43 per car, he's washing, again, the same 10 cars, he's walking away with $30 more. So in this case, the answer for that question actually ends up being $430. And you really wanna be careful with word problems because again, a lot of times students are rushing, they know what they're doing, so they think that they don't have to, just be careful, slow down, read through everything, and you just answer the wrong question. So there's a lot of ways that you could answer the wrong question here. There's also a lot of different ways that they could ask this, right? Another way that I've seen a question like this asked is they would say, how much more money did he make the second week, right? So if you went through all this and you said, okay, so he made $430 and you put 430 as your answer, you'd be marked incorrect. Because in that case, the answer would actually be 30 because he made $30 more, right? And a lot of times if a teacher is grading you, they're gonna give you credit if it's not multiple choice, just for getting most of the way through the answer, right? But if you're taking like something like the state test or a multiple choice test where those small differences are gonna make your answer wrong, you really wanna be careful and just make sure that you have all the information that you need. Again, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm assuming that I can just continue. We don't have any here, right? So we're up to the summary slide. Again, I said this review today wouldn't take too long. So it says earlier in this lesson, you saw that Janelle could find the speed of her train or the rate at which the train traveled using the ratio of distance and time, right? So just please try to remember that ratio. Speed is distance over time. That's gonna come up again and again. The faster you memorize it, the easier it's gonna be for you, okay? It says you can apply this concept of rates to find quantities such as the speed of a vehicle, the rate at which a machine operates, the distance a vehicle travels at a constant speed, and the time taken to complete a task at a given rate. You can find the price of any quantity of an item, such as groceries or fuel, if you know the unit price of the item. You can also use unit pricing to calculate wages, right? So these are all different things that they had examples of here. And ideally, we're just seeing that they are all really just dealing with ratios and rates, right? Even if you don't think of it as a ratio or a rate, hopefully you're seeing that, how they are all connected right now, because I'm sure there's a lot of times where people have, especially with wages, tried to figure out how much something costs or how much money you're gonna make. And it's stuff that this here is probably the best example of how you guys are gonna be using math in your everyday lives, because you're always gonna deal with money, and a lot of times money can deal with ratios and rates, right? So it is 9 o'clock. Again, going over this lesson did not take too much time. So just an overview of what we should be doing with the remainder of our time today, right? So at this point, we still have about an hour and a half of math left. I'm gonna be available to help you guys until 9:30 live, and then you're independent after that. So up to this point, after today, you should have these first 4 lessons complete, right? That means that you went through the tutorial, you answered the questions there, you went to the mastery test, you got an 80. Same thing for rates, table of ratios, application of rates, right? So for all 4 of these mastery tests at the end of today, you should be up to at least an 80 on the mastery tests, right? And if I see that you're taking it, but you're not quite getting there, that's fine, right? I want you to attempt it, and then I can always unlock it to give you another attempt, right? But I have seen some people that haven't completed everything yet, right? People that haven't even got to, the second lesson, the third lesson. I don't want you to fall too far behind, because next week, tomorrow, we're starting with our second unit, right? Expressions and equations, and this stuff is gonna be really important for 7th grade. So I don't want you guys, after today, to be worried about finishing this stuff here. 1 second, Penelope. Okay, go brush your teeth.
No.
So I'm gonna stop the recording for today. I'm gonna stick around to help answer any questions that you guys have, right?